What's up, everybody? Brandon Lilly here with the Be Legendary podcast, brought to you by Sorinex. I am in the palatial confines of Bert Sorin's man cave, and it's a spectacular setting, but we've got a lot to talk about today. Been really excited about this podcast for a couple of reasons, and I tip my hat literally to Bert in Vegas about what I wanted to talk about, but as we were sitting here, he said he kind of had no idea the direction of this. So first of all, welcome me to your palatial man cave.
We discussed palatial and being an English major and a knife forger. So thanks for having me at my house.
Yeah, of course. And thank you for the charcuterie plate that's no longer here. But the importance of this episode is much deeper than most, and it's really going to be, to me, the cornerstone of where we go from here. As I was talking to the guys that help us with the audio, we've done a good job of getting content out, and we've done a good job of creating. But as much as I want to talk about SHOT Show, which is really kind of the overview, I think this is important for us to really set our foot in the cement, so to say, is where we're going with what Be Legendary is. And the inspiration, or the moment that I started really trying to process this out, was somebody asked me what it was about. And I don't want to just say this is a podcast, because in a world where, let's be honest, it's inundated with podcasts and it's inundated with words. But I really want to say something. I want to have a clear-cut message, and I want to know where we're going with this. And I was trying to define what legendary meant to me, and it's not static. It's not something that is set in stone and you can point at someone and say, do what that guy does and you'll be legendary.
Sure.
My dad very much is a guy that punches a time clock Monday through Friday, and as a kid, we were hoping that there was money in the bank on Monday. My dad absolutely fits the bill of legendary in my mind.
Sure.
So it's not money.
Right. No.
It's not a job, because my dad works he's proud of his job, but he works in the parts industry in the automotive world. Again, that's not something that you think of systematically as legendary.
Right.
It's not 1 million followers. It's not $1 million in the bank. So what I'm trying to get down to is a way that we can identify legendary through living examples. What do you think about that? What is your terminology? What is your recognition of legendary? Because for me, there's not one single thing that I can point to.
No, there's not. I think it was just good that you pointed that out. And last year at Summer Strong, I had a presentation on actually this topic, and not saying that my answer is correct or right, but it's more how I thought of it, and through discussing with other like minds. I believe it's relevance. It's being thought of or relevant or useful or valuable in some regard when you're not in the room. Mm-hmm. So your dad, like you said, he didn't have to be there, and he doesn't have to be sitting with us right now for him to still be relevant.
Right.
For the things he taught you, the things that have been developed in you, that you're now, whether it be work ethic or all these other attributes that you're now able to put into the world around you, that came from him. And so his actions, his presence is still relevant, thus making him legendary. So I agree. I don't believe the economy of legendary as a definition is static whatsoever. And I think it really boils down to being impactful.
I think we're very much in the same line of thinking, because as I sit there and honest to goodness, it was me sitting in the shower, as we'll talk about in a little bit. And
you have a seat in your shower?
No, it was the floor. I just kind of sat down there. When you're a fat ass like I am, you tend to just find ways to be lazy. And one of the nicest thing about hotels is they don't really run out of hot water, so you can kind of sit there and contemplate life and what legendary means. But for me, I kept going back to the idea, like you said, it's people that impact much greater than themselves. I've talked about it on here before, and I've talked about it with you personally. I had a lot of very selfish endeavors in my life.
We all have.
Yeah, and I think that is a trait of a lot of people that do get to a status of legendary, but at some point that focus has to shift from self to community. And I want people that hear this, and I'm not trying to be a rah-rah kind of cheerleader for anyone, other than just to really set the example that no matter where you are in your life, I can give you examples of legendary people
Sure.
in a similar setting.
Sure.
I think by conception, we're one in several million, if not billion, and the fact that we are born and we are here, that's a fighting chance. That's a legitimate opportunity to become great.
Sure.
And I think that in a world that we live in, we can sometimes tie ourselves to things that can either raise us up falsely or suppress us falsely.
Sure.
We were talking about it as far as followers.
Right.
I can tell you people who have 1 million plus followers that in talking to them have absolutely zero substance. And I can tell you multiple people with several hundred or maybe 1,000 followers that are literally changing the world. Not just my opinion, but every single person that they are connected to, they are creating that ripple effect of change.
And it makes you question, like I said, the economy. It makes you question the economy that we value one another on. And I mean we as the populace, and there's some people that value the 3 feet and value how I make you feel, you make me feel. And if we walk away with this with a fire in our belly, wanting to go tackle the world and do amazing things. And then there's also the economy that says, well, you have 48,000 followers versus the guy who has 60, so you must not be as good.
Right.
There is something of the social status and all that with the followers and everything, but I do believe, and I think you and I have talked about before, I think it's getting out of hand. I think people they're masking that for what reality is and what actual impact is.
Well, and we talked briefly about the LA Fit Expo, and it was great on a lot of levels where I got to meet or not meet necessarily, but reconnect with some people that I've engaged with in the past.
Sure.
One of the things being a lot of times people have identified that, I've gone through growth and I've gone through change, and that leads to really interesting conversations.
Sure.
Because there are a lot of people, especially in the fitness industry, who are kind of behind the 8 ball in that they're stuck in a rut, that they don't necessarily like where they are or the things that they may be required to do to attain this certain status. But it's a very scary thing to look at your network. I can tell you as I sit here, I think in the last 9 months, I've lost over 8,000 followers. And I could look at that in one of two ways. I could think, okay, I scramble and I start doing things that those 8,000 followers would then appreciate and come back for. Or I can say, what I have done in the last 9 to 10 months has been exactly what I wanted to do. I've posted very, very honestly about who I am, probably more in depth behind the scenes than I've ever showed on social media. And those people left. So I remember a time in my life where I thought every single follower cared and would step up when I needed them to.
Right.
And then I remember sitting in a hospital bed very alone. So my connection to what those followers really identify as, it's trends. I've had times where I lose followers. I've had times where I gain followers, and it's an ebb and flow. And I am very, very confident for really the first time in my life in exactly who I am, what I stand for, what I believe in.
Sure.
And if people are walking away from that, well, that's okay. I'm not mad about it.
Yeah.
I'm not bitter, but thanks.
Yeah. And years ago, someone, I don't remember how it came up, but they talked about define and consider your audience and who is they. Mm-hmm. And, they say, well, what if I don't do this? What are they going to think? Well, who the F is they?
Right.
Like, who really is they? And a lot of times they is this conglomeration of people that may or may not actually exist in your mind that you think really care about what you're doing, saying, or otherwise. And at no point is it considered yourself, your loved ones, and your close family and friends. It's always what they out there. And you and I have talked about some of the most impactful people in our lives. A lot of them aren't on social media at all, and some of them that are have a couple thousand followers, which you would think that aren't doing much, and they're ones that have literally changed the course of the world in some ways.
Well, I think we tend to find ourselves in this culture of more. And, when you're talking about strength or you're talking about looks or you're talking about perception, those things, they erode over time.
Sure.
There is going to be a day when a beautiful woman, I think beauty, again, is like legendary. It's not static, but in traditional terms of what beauty and what we see
Physical,
in
visual aesthetics.
Popular media,
Sure.
There's going to be a day where a woman is hired the day before, and then she is no longer desirable to be hired the next day.
Right.
Same for strength. At some point, you might be able to get stronger and stronger and stronger until you're 50 years old. At 51, that point of strength may start to diminish. So if you're really setting your idea up of success or legendary or, self-worth around a diminishing value,
Sure.
it's a very, very slippery slope because I was that guy.
Sure.
I thought I was going to be strong forever. I thought I was going to be this hulking figure forever. I thought nothing could ever take that away from me. Well, I can tell you, anything that you have in this world down to your last breath can be taken from you.
You got it.
And for me, that was probably the catalyst for the reason I'm sitting here. The reason I'm still alive today was the ability to step away from that person. And I don't fault anybody for their path. I know people that are in the same exact place that I was, thinking the exact same things that I was, and I will never tell them they're wrong.
Sure.
I will just encourage them to be aware that one day it will be over.
Sure. And the wolf that you feed is the one that grows, right? And that's the thing, whether it's social media or regular social stuff or actually creating something new in the industry or changing the world. Whatever you put your efforts and love and passion towards is what's going. No one stumbles across having 250,000 followers.
Right.
They work to do that,
Sure.
so they valued that. So they can't really be mad if I have all this and hey, they valued that enough because it just doesn't happen. Or if you start a brand that completely changes the industry, like our friend Kip. Co-founder.
Well, let's just be honest, or like Sorinex, like you and your dad. I mean, I know you can't say that. So
14,000 followers, baby, watch out.
But I do think it's a very important thing. And my dad, in a very much a way that my dad thinks, he relayed something to me. Even with his lack of understanding, he understood the importance to me. He said, I can remember when you were in your room in high school and you were reading Poe and you were attempting to read Tolstoy and those kind of things. Mm-hmm. He's like, they don't sell those magazines at Walmart, in the magazine stand. Right. He's like, those type of people, those type of writers are not for everyone. Don't be like that for everyone. Don't be a mass market appeal.
Right.
And I always thought, well, you're crazy. Well, the world kind of reiterates you need to be this mass market appeal.
Sure.
And I found that I was always very uncomfortable with that.
Until you realize what actually changes the world and becomes legendary is not mass market appeal.
Exactly.
But that's the weird. That's the dichotomy of it, that the ones who have stepped out and done things that wasn't popular, that no one understood and everyone thought was stupid, those are the ones that became legendary. Mm-hmm. And then whatever economy of followers or friends and all that stuff comes, but they don't go out after that.
Right.
You chase excellence because you chase excellence and passion, and then the money, fame, whatever other stuff that comes, you don't chase that. If you do, you might get a lot of followers and go home to an empty house.
Oh, for sure. And I think that's the appeal for the podcast for me was I love having conversation. I love picking people's brains. But it also allowed me to somewhat stay in a platform where I could use the leverage of the following that I have gained, but also somewhat take the light off of myself and hopefully highlight others. I was trying to think about a lineage of guests that I would like to have on this show, and repeatedly, I mean, yes, there are the guys like I would love to sit down with The Rock, or I would love to sit down with somebody that has 4 or 5 million followers. There are those people.
And the cool thing, they have 4 or 5 million followers because they did the hard work early.
Exactly.
They did the real stuff early.
But I find myself more and more and more inclined to want to talk to people that I wish more people knew about.
Yeah.
And being a part of that growth. And that brings me back full circle to the meaning of legendary. What does Sebastian Junger say about a lone human in the wild? He's a dead human. Mm-hmm. I think that is very, very true to the world that we're living in today. We're all taught that you can be individual, you can have anything you want, you should be outcast, you should do all these things. Those are pretty lonely type existence.
They are.
And I encourage people to, if that is your calling, run full force into it. But like we said before, be willing to admit when that may be coming to a close. And I can damn sure tell you, it's a lot more fun when you got loved ones and your friends around.
Sure.
So for me, legendary simply boils down to this. It's someone who is self-aware, self-responsible, self-respective, but also pays that same care and giving that they give to themselves, or I guess approach to life that they allow themselves to have. They pay that forward to others to make them better.
Sure.
That fits so well into what I just said about this podcast. I'm still active. I'm still involved. But hopefully when you walk away from here, somebody has a better perspective of who you are. And you maybe have learned something from talking to me.
Every time.
I think legendary is just that. It's the ability to connect with people and to make people better than they were before they met you.
Yeah.
Simple, impactful, exactly.
Yeah.
So now that that's kind of out of the way, I just wanted to get that out there so that when people ask, they fully understand what we're about here at Sorinex. It's not about us. It's not about selling one more rack. It's really about creating change and creating an evolution within the world of strength and conditioning, but also the peripheral. You know, we're now into the tactical world. We've got a lot of stuff going on there. We've got a lot of other things that are coming up that may not want to mention just yet because they not yet come to pass. But I think Sorinex is a perfect example of what legendary is. It's 39 years old. You know, started from one man's garage, but look at that. That is one man with one interest that has impacted so many. And I saw that firsthand, and I'm going to put you on the spot and hopefully get your cheeks a little red. Continuously, I was Bert, or it was with Bert at SHOT Show, and if you don't know what that is, it's an industry insider trade show.
Shooting, hunting, outdoor.
Yeah. I mean, it's military. It's a military level to end user consumer level of outdoors hunting, like you said, rifles, pistols, anything in the gun world or knives and outdoor world.
The biggest show of its kind in the world.
It is absolutely overwhelming, and I know a lot of people can recognize the Arnold. I would say, I don't want to try to guess at statistics, but I would say that SHOT Show at least rivals, if not outdoes.
It's certainly in the ballpark for no question.
So we were there for a multitude of reasons. I was there in the Volquartsen booth. They make some really high-end pistols.
Sure do.
They're 22
and Scott's awesome.
Yeah.
Scott's a great guy.
But I kept coming back to this observation. Everywhere that I would go, I just kept getting the question, where's Bert? Where's Bert? And this was even speaking at events where, you know, you were not the highlight. It was not the Bert Sorin show. I
wasn't the highlight at any event. So let's just be clear on that.
No, I mean, they weren't.
Coolio was at the party.
Yeah, you weren't at the tagline, but there were people that were there that could have had when I say they could have been anywhere in the world, I mean they have the means and they have the ability, and people around the world that desire them to be there that could have been anywhere. They chose to be in that Beyond after party looking for Bert Sorin. And it wasn't just one. It was repeated over and over and over. Where's Bert? Where's Bert? Where's Bert? And I thought, well, maybe it was because I'm associated with you. So I stepped back, kind of hid behind a pillar, and I kept seeing people.
Very easy for you to hide.
I kept
very large pillar.
Seeing people come in the door. Where's Bert? Where's Bert? Where's Bert? So what is it about you that makes that so common? I mean, I know you, and I know that I enjoy being around you, but it's for you to answer. What makes you separate yourself?
I don't know if I can. I don't know. I mean, you and I were talking a little bit about it before. I couldn't answer what separates, if that's what you feel it does. That maybe be for you to answer. But I know I've always, you and I were talking before, I was an only child. And, you know, and my parents were divorced when I was very young. So it was my mom and I. And, of course, I saw my dad visitation, everything like that. But for the most part, I was an only child. My mom was a teacher, and she was very into other stuff, gardening and construction projects. And she was very inventive and just an amazing woman. But she was very into, like, her stuff, too. So in many cases, I wasn't abandoned by any stretch of the imagination, but I was left to be, you know, an individual little guy.
It was a different time. I think that
was a different time. You could do this in the 80s,
yeah.
Right? So I always wanted to have. I was a little bit shy growing up. I was kind of like a sweet kid, didn't like, you know, bullies and stuff. I wasn't down with that. I didn't understand that. So kind of reserved at times. But I didn't have anyone really wanted to talk to about it. So I kind of would stay to myself. But when someone would smile at me, or that would basically show acceptance, I loved that. Mm-hmm. I loved watching people's eyes light up, their face light up. And I mean, some people could say, oh, you're a people pleaser. Maybe?
Yeah.
Maybe. I do know that
there are worse things in the world, right?
Yeah, I guess. And like, I really, really, really enjoy. Probably my favorite thing is watching people be happy. Mm-hmm. And like at Sorinex, my favorite thing is finishing the weight room and you show it to the coach or the customer, whoever purchased it from you, and watching their eyes light up, things that they didn't know existed, and watching them be much happier than they thought they could be, that's the best part of the job. People are like, oh, the money, I guess. I know we get the checks and the checks go in a hole and they do some things and makes the building run and all that fun stuff. But the excitement part, why I wake up, is to invent new things, create new opportunities and relationships where people could be better. But I think that goes back to, as a little kid, not having brothers, not having sisters, always wishing I did, always wishing I had a group of friends who I found interesting and who I held in high regard. I mean, whether you a little kid reading skate magazines or stuff like that, and like see these people I held in high regard. And I remember, riding my skateboard, just pretending that I was skating with Steve Caballero or
got a skateboard right over here.
So I got a cab skateboard that actually Wes Whitlock gave me. Yep. And I told him the story, and he actually had an old cab board. So if you're listening, Steve Caballero, because I'm totally sure that you listen to this podcast, thanks. But yeah, I kind of had this little world that I just created in my mind of these amazing people that I got to hang with and be with, and almost kind of pushed myself to be someone and to, I say produce, but to live at the level that people that I looked up to would find attractive or valuable.
Yeah.
And then later in life, I was strangely able to do it, whether it was lifting weights, whether it was throwing implements far, whether it was building equipment that made people smile and made people better, or and sometimes now it's become more of even a social thing of, I have some friends, as well as you do, some that are, definitely 1%ers in the world, that people that are making some crazy things happen. But I find a lot of enjoyment, and maybe it's a selfish thing. I love when people like me and smile, and I don't want to fight anybody. I don't want to piss off anybody. I will if I have to, but that's not me.
Right.
I just you call me whatever, but I love that. And so maybe that need or that want to bring up those around me, maybe that adds value, and I hope it does. And that's kind of the goal.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, maybe that's what people are feeling. I don't know. Well,
one thing that honestly, that is the first time that you mentioned money in any kind of personal capacity in the whole time that I've known you. We talk about money because we talk about jobs that are going out and things like that.
It's something you have to keep up with.
Right. But I was thinking back to several conversations this past week, whether it was Glenn Eberly,
awesome guy,
a business owner, talking to yourself, or, Scottville Courtson, all of these things where these guys are doing okay financially.
Sure.
That is the last thing that I could imagine any of them talking about. It's not this fixated point of, I made this much money, I made this much money, I made this much money. Everything that Glenn talked about was, man, we did this really awesome event. We went to this great place. We saw these awesome people. And you start to notice trends. So when I look at you and you point out these amazing, what do you say? Amazing people, amazing places, amazing experiences.
Sure.
And that's really a recipe for the kind of life that I have hope to live and emulate myself, but I see that repeated over and over and over in the community that you've developed. It's people who aren't fixated on things that the world tells them to do.
Right.
It's people that are out there getting their hands dirty. That they're in the field. They're doing great.
They're still in the fight, and they're still rubbing elbows and Yeah, exactly. I mean, like you said, there was a group of. I'm still. I don't know why I'm there. Yeah. Really, because I kind of go, okay, you're a multi-gold album singer. You're a absolute ninja when it comes to building knives. You build the best packs in the world. You build amazing rifles. Boom, boom, boom. And I just go, what do? I don't know, but I got to be here somehow.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, again, you probably can't feel so secure in saying, I mean, you can feel secure, but feel safe in saying it. I mean, you build equally the same level of equipment.
You build good stuff.
And I think that's what it is. It's a point of creation. It's a point of community. But it's really awesome to see you at that level where you're at this point of achievement, and it's nice. It's not a lot of these expos and a lot of these trade shows. It's the business card swap. You're just there to swap business cards. You're there to get a phone number or an email so you can advance yourself. And in reality, I never felt any of that at any point the entire time that I was there. Even working Scott's booth.
Sure.
I was standing there, and Scott was talking to the clients that were coming in or the people that were just passing through. Tell me about how you shoot. What do you shoot at home? What do you do this? What do you do? It was never like, let me sell you my gun. It's like, let me tell you my story.
Right.
Which equates to you maybe being interested in my gun. And if so, you can call me or you can email me. And I see that over and over and over with him.
And it's interesting, that group, although probably everyone there was popular or doing well for themselves or known or whatever you might want to say, and some of them are very good or at least very successful at business. Either they own their own business or multiple businesses. Very few of them are what I consider probably love business.
Oh, yeah.
They love people.
Yeah.
They love people. They love experiences. They love smiles. And I would say that was probably down the line. If we all had to check a box, that was the box all of us checked. Mm-hmm. And, to be honest, if people want to go out and have some drinks and talk about, investment potentials and return on investment and percentages and all this, deuces, I'm out.
Yeah.
Like I do not find that interesting whatsoever. Does it make me a bad business person? Maybe. Yeah. I don't really care what you think, to be honest. Are my clients and friends smiling?
Yeah.
And if they are, then we're all right.
And that's the thing is I look at, you look at Neil making amazing, incredible knives and getting to go to Vegas Forge. Those guys would be making knives, whether it was Vegas Forge or if it was just at home in their little shed and they were working another 9-to-5 job.
Sure.
I think
he just texted me a minute ago. He bought me a hammer.
Oh,
I'm so excited.
He's amazing. And one of the best parts, and this is a great transition point because I don't want to sit and just build you up as this infallible person because we all.
Let's talk about Neil real quick. So if you don't, Kamimaru, I believe is how he pronounced his last name. RPM Neil on Instagram.
RPM_Neil.
Sorry.
NEIL.
Unbelievable knife maker. Only been doing it 2.5 years. Get him to tell you the full story, but if you want to see absolutely cutlery artwork.
He was in Forged in Fire, and he's also just got he's got a fantastic, tragic, but a story of overcoming and a story of just, it's such an impressive person. Yeah. And when I bounced out away from you and ended up over at LV Tattoo later in the night,
or morning.
Crazy, morning. He and I went to Double Down, which is my favorite bar in all of Las Vegas. It was actually Bourdain's favorite bar. Cool. A few years ago, when he was still alive, I missed him by about 2 hours. I mean, there was a buzz about that place when I went in there, and I never forgot it. I got to see him talk about it one time on one of his specials. But Neil and I sat there, and Kayla and her friend, I think it was John or maybe it was Jordan, I can't remember. We were just introduced very briefly, but they had come and they wanted to go dance, so they left to another place around the block, and it gave Neil and I a real great opportunity to sit down and have a conversation. And again, he could be a guy that is a prick because he's so talented at what he does. He's very successful in what he does, but man, this guy was just like an onion, and I hate to use that over cliched Shrek, words there, but
he's round and he smells bad.
Yeah, exactly. But these people are fascinating, far beyond what they can do.
Sure.
His story and his upcoming, like I found out he's way more into cars than he is into knives. He's been building cars forever. So you get
just to kind of tell the story a little bit. So his mother committed suicide 2.5 years ago, and he got into forging knives as a way to basically work and beat out the anger and deal with it. And so he's forging knives, hand forging 16 hours a day since that day. And he's making some of the most beautiful cutlery works of art I've ever seen. And he's only been doing it 2 years. And his blades are sought after. Was it 1 or 2 year wait on his blades?
For sure.
And it's interesting. He said, I don't care. I'm not trying to be famous. I'm not trying to. The only reason I have Instagram is to help other knife makers, and I'm just working through my problems and by smashing steel. And I told him, I said, well, that's I'm just a steel smasher, so that's equivalent to say that Elvis was a noisemaker.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting to listen to a guy like that, and I certainly don't want to share all of the intimate things that he shared with me, but when you get a real sense of the type of person that they are, again, I hate to keep bringing up the money we were talking about that, and we were talking about his other businesses and his other interests, and he was like, look, I don't really get too worked up about things that can be made. If I break a knife, I can make another one. If I lose $10, I can make $10. Right. He was like, there's money being made everywhere. And it just might mean I have to get uncomfortable to make it. I might have to do things, I might have to do a job that I don't necessarily care about.
Yeah,
but I can make money.
Time, whatever it may be.
You can't replace friends. You can't replace family. And it's just a nice, seemed like every conversation that I had just kind of reiterated those points. It's all the things that you can't replace that you need to be focused on. And as I get older, I know that certainly you've kind of shared some of this stuff. There's nothing wrong with having nice things. There's nothing wrong with having things that you have earned and worked for. But at the end of the day, they're simple comforts. They're simple luxuries. Those are not the things that make or define who you are.
Sure, and maybe some of them are just artifacts of drive. Yeah. And Matt Vincent and I talked about it on a conversation we had a few months ago. He said, I'm not a stuff guy. He's like, I'm a minimalist, and I'm certainly not a minimalist. I'm a gear guy, and it's only because the gear...
Get a shot of that wall.
Well, it's because those are all projects.
For sure.
And that's the thing. But I'm not necessarily a pack rat, but I'm a creator, and I'm a tinkerer. And so you end up having artifacts of that later, because if you're going to be a creator, you create stuff. Absolutely. And then you have stuff, but if the reason for the stuff is to inspire the next iteration or the next change, or I have 15 backpacks on that wall, guess what? I have a lot of friends.
Right.
And do I need probably 2 or 3 of them will do for me, for my application. But when I have friends come over and I get to introduce someone to hunting or someone to camping or something like that, I'm like, hey, grab a pack off the wall, let's go. They're there. They were done as as a project, so I could understand the needs of that specific entity, so I could make something better. But if they're sitting there, I'm not going to throw it away just because it's in the way. As Dad says, it ain't eating nothing. Right. It's sitting there. And now, then I get to have the enjoyment of, we're going outside, and my buddy's like, hey, I don't have a sleeping bag. I'm like, grab one up there. And then I get to go, hey, I helped you stay warm tonight, and awesome. I was able to make your life better. So that's where I think people overlook. They go, wow, there's a lot of stuff. Are you a stuff guy because you want to beat your chest and say you were able to afford a lot of stuff? Or is it just a tool to make your and others' life and experience better? And I believe that's what it is. Or it's just an artifact of artists are going to art, and they end up with artwork.
For sure.
And that's just how it is.
So looking back over SHOT Show as a totality, you got there Monday, right? Or
yes.
Was it Sunday? Yeah.
Monday morning.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. Because so I got to bump into Donnie Vincent.
What an interesting guy.
Yeah, and again, I kind of beating that same horse. I got to meet Donnie because of a mishap with my bags. They sent them to the wrong terminal, and he and I were kind of on this loop of, okay, we're in Terminal 1, we got to pick them up in Terminal 3. In the time that it took us to get there, they had sent them back to Terminal 1. So we got to spend a little time talking to one another, and I don't want to exaggerate it, but it was at least a good 10 or 15-minute talk. And Donnie certainly doesn't know who I am, but I knew who he was. I'm a fan. I've heard him Rogan, and I've seen his documentaries. I started asking him.
He just did an Order of Man.
Yeah,
for Ryan
I'm excited to hear that.
Yeah, I am too.
So I'm talking to him, and I'm asking him questions, and immediately the tables turned. He was asking all the questions. Who I was, what I did, what my background was. Just it was on and on and on. And I started to recognize that is his life on a day-to-day basis, because if he doesn't understand his surroundings,
right.
And if you don't know who Donnie Vincent is, a survivalist, hunter, conservationist,
cool hair.
Documentary maker, just one of the most, and again, any of these people that I've just named, they have a long list of things that they're exceptional at. And even though they might have one standout trait, which would be for him hunting, he has built peripheral things that are just equally as impressive to make him who he is and living the life that he lives. So
he's one of those people that regardless of fame, and I don't know his followers, blah, 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 but I remember seeing a video 3 or 4 years ago, a little teaser video before I knew who it was. And I remember showing it to my wife, and I said, I don't know who this is, but this guy captures the hunting lifestyle and the outdoors light better than I would have ever been able to see it put on video and words. And I saved the video on my phone, and when people would ask me, like at a party, or like, why, and I'd go, I don't know who this guy is, but listen to what he says.
Yeah.
And he's one of those guys that you go, I would like to have dinner with him because the conversation would be amazing. And I respect what's in his brain. I don't care how much he makes. I don't even know what his real job is.
Yeah.
But he's like a wood skier or somebody like that. I actually know what Derek's job is. But, there's very few people that I go, no matter what day, he would always be in the top 3 for a dinner.
Oh, for sure. Well, for those that don't know, Derek Woodsky is the lead consultant to the Dalai Lama. So
12th son of the Lama, flowing robes.
But Donnie's just a fascinating guy. Very, very difficult. Goes deep woods to go on these incredible hunts. So if he doesn't understand his surroundings as well as those that might be an adversary or friend,
sure,
he's dead. Yeah. And that's a reality. So I think in talking to him, he has just adapted his life to get to know as much about his surroundings as possible, because I felt like he was interviewing me. Not in a negative way, but just in a point of understanding. And when we walked away from one another, Nick, his kind of handler there, he was like, yeah, he's going to do your podcast. He liked you a lot.
That's awesome.
And it was like, I brought that up very early on that I would love to sit down and talk with him. Never answered the question, never got to it. And then at the end, when we were walking away, he's like, oh, he'd love to do your podcast.
That's awesome.
So he was sizing me up, I think.
And he was a lean in guy versus
for sure.
lean away.
Well, tell us what that means. That's something that we've kind of both.
Yeah, and actually, the first time I heard it so eloquently put was again by Mr. Woodsky, because everything that guy says is somehow much better than I could say it.
To put it plainly, the Breeze, which that's another story for another day, but Breeze said Derek Woodsky's the kind of guy that would sit in Mongolia and look at a flower for 12 years and come back and report the meaning of life.
Yeah, totally. And would somehow make it a good Instagram post that you would understand.
In a meme.
In a meme. So no, Woodsky had a really good point, and he said, I have a very easy determining, and I'm probably butchering it and paraphrasing, but he said I have an easy determining variable that I see when I start talking to someone, if they're worth me investing in their life or if they're a person I want to be around. And he said if they ask a question or if I start talking, I watch their body language. If they lean back, that means that they're sitting back and they want to be, they're expecting me to feed them. Mm-hmm. And that means their posture tells me they're somewhat lazy, they feel entitled, they feel better, and they're going to sit back and get fed like the king.
That's very much a defensive stance, right?
A defensive, yeah. Now what are you going to tell me?
Right.
Kind of deal. He goes, or the ones that I'm in with immediately are the ones who lean in. Mm-hmm. And when they lean in, it shows me they're hungry. They really are interested in what I'm saying. They can't wait to get to my next word because they're that interested, not in themselves, but in me. And that doesn't necessarily mean he specifically, but just the other person. So we always talked about lean in. You'll see a lot of our times we kind of hashtag the hashtag lean in. I think that's a way of us giving each other the nod. And I agree 100%. And try that next time you're talking with someone you've just met. Watch their body posture. Mm-hmm. Most likely, if they lean back, they're out.
Yeah.
And maybe they should be out.
Right.
So
let's get focused strictly on SHOT. Yep. You've got an association and affiliation with Beyond Clothing.
Sure.
Male model. International male model.
I have a little side gig.
Yeah, but it seems like Beyond, they with Tyler, as far as some of the other guys, Rudy's involved. Some of these people that are just have been or are currently involved with Beyond. They fit that mold of out there on the fringe. Doing
certainly a fringe company. Beyond Clothing, I've been working with them for years. They're out of Seattle, Washington. They're one of the only high-end outdoors clothing brands that are actually made in the States, which mm-hmm. is something they hang their hat on heavily, which I love. They do a lot of work for the military, Tier 1 operations. So you don't see them a lot, but that's kind of what they're about is, their clothes are on the backs of those people that are fighting for freedom that you don't hear about on the news.
Yeah, I think that the last couple of years, last year they had the rap battle.
Sure.
This year they had Coolio, and they had that. I can't remember. It was like the Aquapunks or something.
Spasmatics. They were fantastic.
I was thinking Aquabats. That's a pretty popular punk band, but the Spasmatics, they would put you in the same kind of mindset as the Aquabats. They didn't have a costume on per se, but they were just dressed geeked out, and they were phenomenal. I thought,
unbelievable.
But Beyond had something going on pretty much every night at the Artisan Boutique Hotel, which is it's a very unique hotel in and of itself, and it just seems like there's some really cool things going on with them. What was your favorite moment of the whole Beyond experience?
Well, what I like about Beyond is not only do they do a great product, but they realize it doesn't always revolve around the product. It revolves around the people and Rick Elder's their CEO, and he's really driven the bus on that whole thing. And what he's done well, and he and I have spent a lot of time together. He's a business mentor of mine. He likes pulling from all over the political, gender, everything, all the genres. And as long as they have passion and extraordinary assets, he pulls them together. And the premise of Beyond is to have amazing conversation and understand each other's point of view, which is really similar to an event that happens every May.
Right.
And so when he and I talked and kind of unpacked our vision, it was very similar. I'm an ambassador, great. Mario is a rock climber, and you have MMA fighters. You have all these people from all these people, skiers, and the whole point of it is all of us use clothing outdoors, but all of us are intentionally different.
Yeah. And
so we spent a week in Moab together on a shoot, and part of it was let's bring up topics of conversation that are controversial, and let's hear each other out. And really dive into, how do you feel? Why do you feel that way? What is your evidence for feeling that way? Hey, can we change each other's mind? And if we can't, that's okay, cool, but we heard each other. And so that's what I love about what they're doing. And by the way, they make really cool clothes.
Yeah.
And so by getting that hotel, and they set up shop out there and all of their stuff, and so they actually rented the entire hotel. So I was with them and a couple other folks that were there in the industry, and we were able to kind of drive our own bus, and it felt a lot Sorinex-y, which is why I was obviously drawn to it. And sometimes you just gotta jump the shark too and just do weird stuff. And Coolio marrying some people with a tiger that was in the room a moment ago, like an actual tiger.
Yeah.
It's Vegas at that point.
Well, it's funny that you say that about controversial topics and understanding differences and things like that. I'll never forget, I was 19. I was in one of my sophomore year of college, and I have a professor who actually probably one of the foundational mentors in my adult life, Dr. Phil English. I want to give him as much credit as possible. We had a really unique background in the school that I went to, very diverse college, founded in 1859, and it was 50% white Appalachian students with 50% African American in 1859. His only saving grace at that point was that he was a pastor. They were not going to publicly hang a pastor for doing this kind of stuff. So his faith of creating a school that was not Christian, but it was based around Christian principles. So it's forced some very tough conversations throughout the history. So I'm sitting in this class, and I'll never forget, Dr. English looked at me and he said, "Do you believe in God?" And I said, "Well, yeah, of course I do, right?" And he said, "Okay, tell me about it. Why do you believe in God? Because your mama told you to? Because church told you to? Or have you actually done the homework?" And I said, "Well, I've read the Bible." He said, "Have you read the Quran?" And you got to keep in mind, this is post September 11th.
Wow.
My patriotic, kind of gumption, I was like, "Hell no, I've never read that book." And he said, "Maybe you should, because it's very easy to stay in the same house and believe that your family is the greatest thing in the world. You might need to get outside those doors to realize that the world's a lot bigger." And he said, "If you believe in something, don't just reiterate that faith with what you know and what you understand. Challenge it.
Yeah.
Get out there." So he said, "I bet you don't believe in God the same way if you read other texts." He said, "I'm not trying to challenge your belief in God. That's fantastic because it's faith.
Right.
But challenge it. Understand it from all angles and strengthen your own belief from the outside of others."
Absolutely.
And I think that, through my entire life, that lesson has really softened who I am as a man. Because we like to posture as this big, strong, hulking individual. But I have to understand, why do I feel this way? Why do I say these things? Why do I believe these things? And oftentimes,
why am I maybe not right?
I had no skin in the game of belief.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I was just reiterating and regurgitating things that I've been told over and over and over. And when you really sit down and you start to contemplate heavily, or you hear people's stories from a different background, sometimes you gotta man up and admit that you're wrong. And I think that's something that I've seen within the Sorinex community. I definitely see it with Rick Elder. I mean, you see that guy, and he can almost be comical at first approach.
Totally.
But the guy is fantastic and brilliant.
One of the smartest guys in the room.
So beyond, he brings this culture there that I very, very quickly acclimate to, because you got some really great people within the company. They're doing really interesting things. They're pushing the envelope with their clothing, and they're just bringing people together. So,
Absolutely.
The Beyond event was a standalone, but outside of the Beyond event,
That's a double plug.
Yeah. What was your favorite moment of SHOT Show?
Oh, man. I mean, it's hard to say the favorite. I'll do a few of them. It was kind of a rundown. It was great hanging out with Kyle Carpenter.
Yeah.
He lives here in town. We went to the same college, and I give him a hard time. I have to go to Vegas to see him.
Right.
If you don't know who that is I believe he's still the youngest Congressional Medal of Honor winner.
Yeah.
Young Marine. If you ever hear of, people say, well, I'd jump on a grenade for him. No, he actually jumped on a grenade for his buddies. And I would assume that action knowing damn well that it was going to blow him up and kill him.
Yeah.
And somehow he didn't die.
Right.
And somehow he had a jillion surgeries and all this rehab and everything like that. So, I was talking about it with my wife, and, it's one thing, and not to take away any bit from some of the special operators that we know that have done some of these amazing operations, but those operations are surgical, they're clinical, they generally go bad, and they're able to fight their way out of it or whatever it may be. But what someone does with less than a split second of planning or judgment exposes the heart and what's in there. And if you have to decide that long, are you going to die or not?
Right.
That long, that was it. I mean, my life ends in 1 second from now. Mm-hmm. Are you ready to do that for the guy next to you? And I know it's sexy and it's real easy to say. And maybe you would I'm not saying you specifically, but maybe some people, if given 10 minutes to really weigh everything out, would go, okay, yeah, I really do love this, whatever. But with zero preparation, you didn't know what's about to happen. And to make the decision within 1 second that I'm going to die right now for that guy, mm-hmm. and to jump on a grenade, I can't think of anything much more badass and much more that I would want to, maybe in my best day of my life, exhibit that amount of love.
And courage.
Yeah. I don't know if I could. And that he was able to and proved it through his actions, mm-hmm. and didn't think that he would be around to take the accolades and the free drinks and the attaboys and the Congressional Medal of Honor and all these things later on. He was willing to end his story right then.
Well, we were in the presence. I think you got there just a hair after I did, and I actually saw the Uber pulling away. But to more or less be on the same grounds as two Medal of Honor recipients.
Sure.
Dakota Meyer was there, and then also Kyle Carpenter. And then to not only – so let's back up just a second. This was at the Leatherneck Club. This is a Marine bar. This is, I would say that on a normal Tuesday – you and I would probably not be welcome, but because of the circumstances,
we would have holes in us leaving.
Yeah, and the friends that we've made and the connections that we've made there, I'll tell you, one of the best.
The Recon Scout Sniper Foundation.
Cannot say enough good about those guys. The first night I was there, it was Monday night. I got to hang out with those guys in a very, very private setting.
Sure.
Maybe 10 or 12 guys that are just some hard charging, hard dick dudes. I mean, they're just the baddest of the bad in the best way.
Right.
And really got to talk to them in a different light than normal, because a lot of times it's pomp and circumstance. It's the public eye. And I was just a silent observer. I didn't really know why I was there, but I'm hearing these guys share their stories with me, and I'm getting to feel this sense of like, man, what have I done with my life? Because these guys, I mean, it was just story after story after story, and it was not braggish.
Yeah.
It was.
They're just unpacking.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really what it's unpacking, those compartments that they've stored away forever in a safe setting.
Yeah.
And then to fast forward to Leathernecks, there's a guy there named Bluto. And
naturally.
Yeah. And the thing about him, he and I kicked it off last year real well. Like, I don't know why, but just one of those people that you meet and it feels like a good connection.
Sure.
I saw him when I walked in the door. He looks at me and said, "Man, so glad to see you. I'm glad you came back." That shocked me, for one. And then two, I noticed he had this belted machine gun feed, just this line of ammunition down his chest. And I asked him about it. I said, "What is this?" I thought it was maybe like he just being a hard ass.
Yeah.
He said, "Man, I'll tell you, each of our guys that we've lost, there's an ash or there's a patch or there's something rolled up inside of each one of these shell casings." Wow. He said, "They're going to ride with us forever." He said, "Anytime I ride my bike, those guys are riding with me. And when I can't ride anymore, I'll have one on there and somebody else will assume this."
Wow.
And hats off to that guy. I mean, it was very touching, and it was pretty awesome. But then a few days later on Instagram, I get a connection from the owner of Leathernecks. Mm-hmm. And he said, "Tell Bert," which I was going to tell you off the air, but I'll tell you right now. He said, "You and Bert are always welcome here." He said, "The first drink's always free. You're always welcome here. We'd love to have you back. Doors are open." And those are the things that you can't buy with a ticket.
Yeah. Wow, that's touching. 'Cause that group, like you said, are arguably a hard group of hard men. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was a Marine recon scout sniper party. Mm-hmm. I'm not a Marine.
Right.
I'm not a recon scout sniper.
Right.
I kind of like to party.
Right.
1 out of 3 at best. And then, you had Hell's Angels cruising in, Banditos cruising in, all these bike clubs cruising in. And again,
Rudy Reyes fighting them all.
And, and you look around and you go, okay, I don't fit here.
Right.
It's not that I'm not supportive, but stereotypically you won't have a long discussion about why you should be there in that situation.
I mean, biker bar, Marine bar, and then you put them two together. It's a Marine biker bar. It's a tough outfit, at first look.
If crap went sideways, that was the bar that would turn it back around.
Well, I posted a picture of some of the guys there, and I said, literally the safest place I could be right now. Nothing's going down here. But they raised so much money for these veterans.
It's fantastic.
Again, Recon Sniper Foundation. They're on Instagram. I encourage you guys to follow them. They do usually a lot of unspoken good.
Yes.
They don't try to advertise and beat their chests. Maybe somewhat in the community, they want it known that they will help.
Well, because there's some badasses.
Yeah.
Let's be real honest.
There's some really great people there. But that was a highlight for me.
Yeah.
Obviously, getting to spend time with you and Laura and that group of people.
Yeah.
Probably one of my favorites was going over to LV Tattoo later after all that broke down.
Right.
And Duncan. Like, getting to hang with Duncan. How cool
I didn't know you got to hang with Duncan anymore that night.
Yeah. Oh, we were there till the wee hours.
Oh, the owl. I love that guy.
But Duncan, he does a lot of stuff for Southern Grind,
sure.
Southern Ground, and affiliates with the band.
Yep.
And then Jason, the guitar tech for Zach Brown. Just getting to hang with those guys. And
such a good group.
Find them on a very human level. And then props to Jason. He goes by JJ Links on Instagram. He's been instrumental in my growth in the guitar.
Obviously.
Like I'll be playing, and he'll say, "Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Try it like this." And he'll send me a video. I mean, what better coach could you have than a guy that's setting up guitars for one of the best guitar players in the world?
Yeah. He's stage right. He runs all the guitars for the Zach Brown Band, which are known for their guitar work, their picking. I mean, and he's the guy that makes sure everything stays solid. And I try not to screw him up too much.
So with all of that good going on at SHOT Show, what was your biggest takeaway from SHOT? Like, did you feel like – because I'll tell you, I went to another expo after that, and I can't honestly say that I gained anything from it. I mean, I got to meet some people that I knew.
Sure.
I got to talk to Joseph from Cured, which I really like Joe.
Sure.
I like what Cured is about, the CBD company. But beyond that, and beyond a couple casual conversations, I don't really feel like I gained from the expo. I do feel like I gained from the expo at SHOT. What about you?
Of course. I think I've said it before. It's like getting to see all the best bands in the world like 5 days in a row. I felt like that. I mean, every day it was a 6:30 a.m. till 2:30 a.m. kind of day.
Are you tired right now?
I am freaking beat. I am beat.
I am very tired. I mean,
you squeezed in L.A. between then. I've just kind of gone to work and I guess kids and everything. But it wore me out. But I came back so charged before the fuel burned off.
Right.
it was like, I called the wife. I was like, oh my gosh, it was such an amazing week, and boom and boom and boom and this and that and the other. And it boils down to just spending extraordinary time with extraordinary people. And that was across the board things we were able to do there. And yeah, there's some business certainly that came from it. I can't take a week and not have, moving the needle or moving the ball down the field in some way. But I got to hang out with my friends, and the friends that I also look up to and want to emulate a portion of what they do in their life. And hopefully that what I'm doing, it adds value to their life, and I believe it does. And so we all get to, just do life together. That's the best part.
So how do you tell someone who might be starting out in business, let's say their sophomore year of owning their own business, and they want to get to a level, not necessarily a Sorinex, not necessarily, a Beyond, but they want to stay in their lane and they want to grow their business and they want to grow these relationships. What do you tell the person who's really trying to establish themselves in an industry where, as of right now, they're the new guy on the block and they're not necessarily always welcome? Or the perception is that they're on the outside rather than on the inside circle.
Right. Man, you got to keep pushing. You got to keep plugging. Like, I look back and, my dad has talked to us and he'll kind of laugh, and I kind of talk with the new guys. And, thankfully the sales crew that we have, they could walk into any, high performance athletic facility probably in the world and be somewhat welcome. Mm-hmm. And it's from what they're carrying the Sorinex name.
Right.
And I joke with them, I go, wasn't that easy in 2000?
Right.
There were some times that couldn't get a meeting, couldn't get this, couldn't get that. And then Dad laughs at me. He goes, try 1985.
I guarantee it.
He goes, when Nautilus ran the world, and he goes, I was some guy that did all this Olympic lifting and this big tall guy that did grip training that everyone thought was stupid. And he goes, I've stood out in the parking lot in the rain a lot of times for meetings. Yeah. But if he would have given up then we wouldn't be sitting here. So you got to keep pushing. And I think people you got to run it like a sprint, but you have to somehow find the endurance for the long haul. And that means, I don't know, are you cool with being good at it in 10 to 15 years?
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what it's going to take. You look at everyone in the world that's doing amazing things right now that everyone's blowing up, whether it's Gary V or Frizella or Zach or whoever. They were doing the same stuff 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
Right.
But they were doing it because they believed in it. Mm-hmm. And they were doing it and they were getting better at their craft. We talked about Joe Rogan today. Mm-hmm. Joe's done a whole lot of stuff, but he stayed true to what he's about.
Right.
But he's just done it for a really long time. Mm-hmm. And
and it would be a much different conversation. It would be a comedy podcast if Joe only talked about comedy.
Right.
Joe has
fighting.
Yeah, he has a wide range of things that he's interested in. He delves into things, he even self-proclaims gets down the rabbit hole on a lot of topics. But it diversifies him and it gives him something to talk about. If you go up to someone, and listen, I'm a lot of times peripheral to what Bert does, so I'm the odd guy out at a party. But now I find myself, okay, I'm associating with people that you introduced me to without you being there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that is the evolution and growth. You're going to be the odd guy out. You're going to be the oddball standing there twiddling your thumbs. But I can tell you this, if all you have to talk about is yourself and all you have to talk about is your product, you're going to be standing there alone for a long
time. You're going to be the odd guy. Yeah, and I see it as a win when I see you, with people that I introduce you to, when I see you guys on Instagram, I'm like, hey, what's the coolest thing? I didn't even know they were hanging out today. Mm-hmm. I'm glad they are. And some people get protective about it. Like, well, that's my buddy. That's why didn't he call me? Dude, hey, that means I planted a seed and it's growing now. Yep. And the seed is that relationship between those two people. It makes me happy and thrilled when I see that. And I know you do the same thing for me. Right. And everyone does in this industry or this group that we have. And it makes us happy. And it's not like, hey, bro, like I see you're doing some work with him. How about a little finder's fee for that relationship? Right. And because that's honestly how it works in part of the industry. They go, well, you hooked us up, or how this, what do you charge? Screw a finder's fee. I'm not worried about that crap. Like, does it make your life better? Great. Awesome. Did I help? Awesome.
Right.
And, that you just keep doing that. And then, but 10 or 15 years later, then you have a tribe and you have people and you always hone your craft of making sure that you can make people feel better, inspired, And yeah, some of it comes natural, but some of it's extremely intentional. And that's my job, is to make sure that other people reach their dreams. But notice at no point did I say my job is to make me cooler.
Mm-hmm.
That's not my job.
Well, I think we've just come full circle. We've answered what Legendary is. We've discussed SHOT Show, and Bert, in his own way, just really fulfilled the answer that I was looking for. It is that, you're rivaling Jason Ferrugia, or Jay Ferrugia, as the nucleus. I call Jay that because he can point you in a direction of some pretty incredible people, and guys like him inspire me to look at who in my life. It may not be I can't introduce him to a professional athlete, or I can't introduce him to a movie star, but who can I introduce to this person to make their life better?
Right.
And that's all we can really do, because you're either lifting people up or you're like the crabs in the bucket. When you see someone climbing, you're pulling them right back down in.
There's enough of that.
I choose to be the person that, at least if I can't lift myself up, I'm going to lift as many people up as I can, in the hopes that they'll remember and they'll pull me up along the way. That, to me, is legendary. And that, to me, wraps up this podcast. Unless you have anything else to say, I think that's pretty much...
You nailed it.
I think that's it. So try to do a little better. Try not to pick people up. Try to help people up.
Yep.
And it's been an awesome day sitting here with you in this palatial cave. So that's it for this week. We're going to talk to you guys very, very soon. I feel like we could go on forever, but that's a good time to wrap up there. As always, stay strong, love yourself, love somebody, and be legendary.